Welcome to Courtside with Kristy Greenberg. I'm a former federal prosecutor and former SDNY Criminal Division deputy chief, here to break down the biggest legal battles making headlines. No story is messier than the Epstein file fiasco. The drama started in D.C. and is now unfolding in my home court, the Southern District of New York. Look, I've prosecuted sex trafficking cases there, and trust me, none of this is normal. The way the leadership of the Department of Justice has handled the Epstein file has been a disaster from start to finish. It's the perfect blend of incompetence and corruption. I'm going to share the 5 most epic fails of the Epstein file fiasco and everything you need to know about what's really going on with this scandal. I'll also give you my hot take on what happens next. Fail number 1. Attorney General Bondi calls a White House press conference to announce nothing. 3 weeks after being sworn in as Attorney General, Pam Bondi invited several social media influencers to the White House for a press conference. She handed them binders labeled The Epstein Files, Phase 1, and The Most Transparent Administration in History. The problem? Almost all the material was already public. Sharing public documents and then bragging that you're the most transparent administration in history isn't the flex you think it is. That's like microwaving my son's Happy Meal and calling myself a master chef. Past attorneys generals held press conferences to announce criminal charges. Bondi held a press conference to announce nothing. This was Bondi in her 4 Seasons Total Landscaping era. Fail number 2. AG Bondi says she can't find the Epstein file. After Bondi was mocked for that circus of a press conference, she fired off an angry letter to FBI Director Kash Patel. She said she asked for the complete files related to Jeffrey Epstein, and in response, she got approximately 200 pages of flight logs, Epstein's contacts, and victims' contact information. She said she repeatedly asked if this was the full set of documents, and she was assured by the FBI that it was. Okay, hold on. Why is she even asking if 200 pages of flight logs and contacts is the entire Epstein file? Obviously, it's not. There are over 1,000 victims. That would mean there were more victims than pages. Bondi then did what she does best. She went on Fox News. Pam Bondi loves being on Fox News more than J.D. Vance loves being on his couch. Bondi vented about the FBI stonewalling her. She said she learned from a whistleblower that the FBI New York office had thousands of Epstein documents. Bondi said Kash Patel was just as surprised as she was to learn this new information. Seriously? How are Bondi and Patel surprised that the case agents had the case file and that the case file contained thousands of documents? I mean, come on, a whistleblower? Really? You need a deep throat to locate a case file in your own department? Hard to see you going after sex traffickers when finding the paperwork was more than you could manage. It's giving Milton from Office Space looking for his stapler. Fail number 3. Bondi promised and didn't deliver. Pam Bondi teased the Epstein file like Taylor Swift dropping an album. She promised that all Americans would see the full Epstein files because the American people have a right to know. When Bondi was asked on Fox News about the Epstein client list, she replied, "It's sitting on my desk right now." Fast forward to 5 months later. After all the press and all the hype, Pam Bondi didn't hold a press conference. She didn't go on Fox News. On a Sunday night over the July 4th holiday weekend, DOJ and FBI leaked a 2-page unsigned memo which said they wouldn't be disclosing any more material. 2 pages. Bondi and Patel did how many interviews and podcasts talking about Epstein? There wasn't a camera they didn't like. And now they just dropped the whole thing with a 2-page memo? Of course the MAGA base is outraged. They were courted with a binder, promised a file, and after being strung along for months, dumped via memo. And to add insult to injury, Bondi now says there wasn't a client list on her desk. Maybe she sent it to a foreign gulag hoping it would disappear. Fail number 4, the cover-up. That 2-page memo raises more questions than it answers. The memo says there is an order to keep much of the Epstein file under seal to protect victims. But that doesn't explain why they didn't release the material that wasn't under seal. Why didn't they redact the victims' names like Bondi said she would? No one was expecting DOJ to share child pornography or victims' names and identifying information, so it's totally dishonest for DOJ to use that as a basis not to provide anything from the file. The memo also says there was no credible evidence that Epstein blackmailed prominent individuals. So is there evidence that Epstein blackmailed prominent individuals, but DOJ just didn't find it credible? The memo also says there was no incriminating client list. So is there a client list, but DOJ just didn't find it incriminating? If DOJ wants to take the position that only evidence that DOJ decides is incriminating and credible can be released to the public, okay, but that's a far cry from the transparency Bondi promised. She should have to explain the 180. Bondi went from lifting the veil on the disgusting actions of Jeffrey Epstein and his co-conspirators to not having enough evidence to even open an investigation of anyone. What changed? What changed is that Bondi had FBI agents work around the clock for months reviewing the Epstein file and flagging any mentions of Donald Trump. What do you know? According to the Wall Street Journal, Trump's name appeared in the Epstein file not once, not twice, but multiple times. And there were also many other high-profile figures in the file, hundreds of other names. And what did Bondi and her deputy, Todd Blanche, do with that information? Did they go all Liam Neeson tracking down sex traffickers? No, they dismissed it all as unverified hearsay. Hearsay is just an out-of-court statement. Most victim statements are hearsay, and victim statements can't be verified if you don't bother to try to find evidence to verify them. It would be one thing for them to say, we looked into these claims, and after we investigated, we didn't find any evidence to support the claims, so we don't believe them. But Bondi and Blanche made clear in their memo, they didn't open an investigation into anyone. They can't say there's no evidence when they didn't look for any. They could have said that any and all claims of wrongdoing were thoroughly investigated by the Southern District of New York, and they're content to rely on SDNY's investigative work. And if that's true, it would beg the question of how they could justify firing the Epstein and Maxwell prosecutor who led that investigation. So Bondi and Blanche didn't open an investigation of anyone. What did they do? They went running to the White House and told Donald Trump he was in the Epstein file. Somehow they left that highly relevant fact out of their 2-page memo. That's not transparency, that's a cover-up. The problem is, once Trump's name is in the Epstein file multiple times and Bondi and Blanche reported that to him, they lose all credibility because their decision to report that to him means they're not independent. At that point, their incentives are to keep their boss happy so they can keep their jobs, not get to the truth and do their jobs. It's a total conflict of interest, and it destroys whatever little independence they may have had. Everything they say has to be viewed through that lens. So when they say nothing in the files warranted further investigation or prosecution, is that because they actually believe that? Or because they had to shut everything down as soon as Trump's name appeared in the file? Bondi and Blanche have given us no reason to trust them. And let's be real. It was obvious that Trump was in the Epstein file. If he wasn't, Bondi would have said so. And Elon Musk, who had unprecedented access to Trump and sensitive government information through Doge, not only said that Trump was in the Epstein files, but said that is the real reason they have not been made public. Sure, he's scorned. His bromance with Trump lasted about as long as Kim K's 72-day marriage. But that doesn't mean he's wrong. Not to mention that Epstein is on audio tape saying, "I was Donald's closest friend for 10 years. And we've seen video footage of Trump and Epstein partying with women together. We've heard Trump in 2002 calling Epstein a terrific guy. He's a lot of fun to be with. It is even said he likes beautiful women as much as I do. And many of them are on the younger side." Yikes. Is that a compliment? Makes you wonder if Trump saw Kendrick's Super Bowl show and thought it was a Drake tribute. Say, Jeff, I hear like I'm young. And then you've got the Wall Street Journal reporting that Trump sent a birthday letter to Epstein with the outline of a naked woman and his name signed below her waist to mimic pubic hair, as one does. In this letter, Trump apparently told Epstein, "We have certain things in common. Enigmas never age, and may every day be another wonderful secret." Look, I don't know exactly what Jeffrey Epstein would have wanted for a birthday greeting, but this creepy coded letter seems to kind of nail it. This is what it looks like when you care to send the very best, but Hallmark doesn't make a card for America's most infamous pedophile. Trump doesn't even buy Melania birthday gifts, though his gift of being nowhere near her is priceless. So yeah, Trump being in the Epstein files is hardly shocking. What is shocking is that Bondi started this whole thing by committing to release the file and promising transparency. Any lawyer with half a brain would review the file to see what's in there before committing to do anything with it publicly. It's an unforced error, a self-inflicted wound. It is Plaxico Burress shooting himself in the leg. Fail number 5. Trump is spiraling. So Trump is having a total meltdown. Trump now wants us to believe that the Epstein case is a hoax. Trump also wants us to believe he's 6'3" and weighs 224 pounds. Same height and weight as Pittsburgh Steelers wide receiver DK Metcalf. But in all seriousness, Epstein's not dead over a hoax. Maxwell's not in jail for 20 years for a hoax. Over 1,000 sex trafficking victims aren't a hoax. It is beyond offensive to every victim for the President of the United States to call the Epstein case a hoax. We're in a dark place as a country when Trump isn't universally condemned for that statement. That alone should be a scandal. Last week, Trump denied that Bondi told him he was named in the Epstein file. The White House blasted the Wall Street Journal story that Bondi and Blanche told Trump he appeared in the Epstein file as fake news concocted by Democrats. But Bondi and Blanche admitted it. They said they briefed Trump and his name coming up in the file wasn't the sole focus of their discussions. Newsflash, it's not fake news when it's confirmed by your own DOJ. Trump is also claiming that Democrats wrote the entire Epstein file. Again, Trump's own DOJ investigated and prosecuted Epstein during Trump's first term. Over the past several months, Trump's own DOJ and FBI reviewed the entire Epstein file and didn't report anything about Democrats or falsified evidence. You know it's bad when the people who believe in Jewish space lasers are like, yeah, that's a stretch. Trump is lashing out, calling his supporters weaklings for buying into Epstein bullshit, hook, line, and sinker. It's giving Niedermeyer from Animal House. You're all worthless and weak. It's unhinged, even for Trump. Trump's acting more guilty than the astronomer CEO and HR chief caught on the kiss cam at the Coldplay concert. So what will happen? Let's start with what won't happen. Trump said he won't recommend a special counsel be appointed to review the case and produce a report. Yeah, shocking. He doesn't want anyone independent coming in. He wants Bondi to protect him. What else won't happen? Congress voting on releasing the Epstein file. Republicans avoided that vote like it was a COVID shot. Speaker Mike Johnson sent the House home early for the summer to dodge that vote, but not before the House Oversight Committee voted to subpoena DOJ for the Epstein file, which will go nowhere. They also issued subpoenas to Ghislaine Maxwell, the Clintons, and all past attorneys general dating back to Alberto Gonzalez through Merrick Garland. Okay, let me get this straight. They're going to subpoena a convicted sex trafficker who falsely denied that there was a sex trafficking operation, was charged with perjury, and isn't going to say anything to incriminate herself while her appeal is pending before the Supreme Court. They're going to subpoena the Clintons because, yeah, okay, and several past attorneys general. But they're not going to call the current attorney general and the current deputy attorney general to testify about their department's months-long Epstein file review and their conclusions? Of course not. That would mean congressional Republicans growing a spine. That's as likely as Stephen Miller growing a heart. What else won't happen? AG Bondi won't go back on Fox News to talk Epstein. There's a chance she'd have to answer hard-hitting questions, like what's on her desk. So what will happen? Trump recommended that DOJ produce credible evidence in all grand jury transcripts, meaning nothing that mentions Trump. Trump knows he's not in the grand jury transcripts. It's a red herring to distract from the evidence that does matter and potentially could mention Trump. Witness interview notes, videos, photos. It's like a cheating husband letting his wife check his phone when he's got a burner for the mistress. The grand jury transcripts are going to be focused on evidence proving Epstein and Maxwell's guilt, not anyone else's. The Maxwell trial judge ruled that the identities of certain victims and witnesses should not be disclosed. Why? The need to prevent undue embarrassment and harassment from the press and third parties. The judge also noted that making names public could lead others not to report abuse. She's got a point. Transparency sounds nice, but naming names comes at a cost. It's an extraordinary invasion of privacy, a major safety risk, and a massive reputational harm. Someone's name being in the Epstein file doesn't mean the person did anything wrong. And yet, it's become a modern-day scarlet letter. For people who aren't public officials with a platform, having their names revealed could ruin their lives. They have no real way to clear their names since they're not charged with a crime. Of course, Blanche's motion to unseal the grand jury transcripts didn't address any of those potential harms. Nor did his motion address the basic factors courts consider when deciding whether to disclose grand jury transcripts. Starting with, what specific information do you want disclosed and why? It is a huge red flag that no SDNY prosecutors signed on to that lame motion, which would be the norm. It tells you they knew it was lame and they didn't agree with it. Now, a judge in Florida has denied DOJ's motion to release grand jury transcripts from the Epstein investigation in Florida. And there's no way that the SDNY judges will allow grand jury transcripts to be released in their entirety. Unfortunately, I fully expect Trump, Bondi, and Blanche to blame the judges to deflect from their own amateur hour antics. But you know who aren't amateurs? The two SDNY judges considering these motions, Judge Berman and Judge Engelmeyer. They are very well respected and experienced judges. I've appeared before both of them. They are careful and they are thoughtful, and they do not deserve to be harassed, threatened, or worse, just for doing their jobs. What else may happen? I expect you'll see Freedom of Information Act requests, specifically for any discussions about Donald Trump or any other public officials in the Epstein file. Public officials aren't entitled to the same privacy protections as others, and there is a stronger public interest in accusations against them, as well as any potential cover-up that abuses their position of public trust. This is the litigation I'll be watching for. Trump's lies about the Epstein case being a hoax, the file being concocted by Democrats, and his name not being in the Epstein file makes the public interest in seeing the documents where he's mentioned compelling. Which brings me to what else may happen. I expect Bondi will look for a fall guy. In recent days, we've seen two longtime public servants get fired. DOJ's top ethics advisor, Joseph Terrell, and lead prosecutor in the Epstein and Maxwell case, Maureen Comey. We don't know why they were fired, but these are two people who could have weighed in about what should and should not be disclosed from the Epstein file. So it's possible they could be her fall guys for her decision not to release the Epstein file. Now look, there are a lot of distractions to keep your eye off the ball, which is the Epstein file. One major distraction is Blanche setting up a meeting with Ghislaine Maxwell. Let's review. She's charged with perjury for denying that a sex trafficking organization existed. She told the court that she lacked evidence to support her account. Well, if that's accurate, DOJ can't rely on her to make a case against anyone. All cooperating witnesses need to be backed up by other evidence to show a jury that they should believe what they're saying. Even more so here, where Maxwell has lied, is serving 20 years in prison, and has every incentive to tell Blanche what she thinks he wants to hear to try and get a reduced sentence. And last but not least, what else may happen? There's always the chance that someone in Trump's cabinet leaks the Epstein client list to a journalist in a Signal group chat. Just imagine the emojis. So now I want to hear from you. Who do you think is to blame for the Epstein file fiasco? What do you think will happen next? Let me know in the comments, and please subscribe to keep up with all the latest Epstein file developments.